Well, hello there, and welcome to another edition of Warbird Wednesday. My name is Fred Bell. I am the vice chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum. Had to think about that for a second. My lateral assistant, Greg Kenny. Now, Greg, I must tell you, I think there's a pattern going on here with the hats. This is the, what do you call it? A bucket, whatever you want to call it. They're turning into these quite elaborate head buckets. I'm going to pull this one off. I got my ears lowered, though. Is that? And off camera we go. There we are to the Mr. Kenny. Another fine catch. You know, Greg, we are closing in on our 150th episode. Can you believe that? 150 episodes. That means, can we have been doing this 3 years? I guess that's possible, right? We do it every week. So pretty darn close. Wow. Well, you know, Greg, you're looking a lot better. I'm getting a lot grayer. I don't know what's going on here. But today we are focusing on the Antonov, the An-2. Now, the Antonov, another cargo airplane. Now, we're taking a little bit of a step back. You know, with the 133 that we did in the last episode, we were up into a turboprop, fairly sophisticated, pressurized. If there was a Cro-Magnon man cargo airplane, and this, by the way, is not an Antonov, but is going to settle in for our demonstrator because we could not find a decent facsimile. We don't have one here. Hole in our collection, Greg, in our model trove. We need to get one. But the Antonov, if there was a Cro-Magnon version of a cargo airplane, the Antonov would fit the bill. This is a biplane, 12 paratroopers, or cargo drums, or cargo, or you name it. I mean, it could carry all kinds of fairly large loads in it, but it was extremely easy to operate. It flew maximum speed 160 miles per hour. Its cruise speed was 120 miles an hour. It was designed to land on rough fields. It could be started without any type of ground support. It had its own fuel pump on board, so you could literally land on a rough field. If there was a drum of fuel there, you could go over, stick a hose in it, take fuel that way. You didn't have to do anything as far as support. Now, this type of primitive aircraft goes all the way back to 1947, which is what his first flight, and of course, it was with the Soviet Union at that time. The Soviets were doing it. It comes out of a design bureau requirement that goes back to the early 1940s, if you can believe that. But they were basically looking at moving a lot of cargo with a kind of a medium lift, which is what I would call it, aircraft. They didn't care whether it was very fast. Why would you care, right? You just wanted range, and you wanted to have lift. And like everything else the Russians produced, you have to remember, in Russian society at that time, Russian society was primarily agrarian. There was a lot of farms, small villages. The conscripts that were coming in to, whether it was the Soviet Air Force or the Soviet Army, were not these highly skilled, highly trained workers. So they needed things that could be maintained simply. They were flying in the steppes of Russia. So they were looking at extremely difficult conditions, all kinds of weather conditions. So that's why that requirement was put out. Now, it was designed to replace the all-wood, the PO2, the PO-2, and it did a fantastic job. Now, how many of these bad boys did they build? There have been over 18,000 of these aircraft built. Now, some interesting statistics. 5,000 of them were built in a factory right outside Kiev. Think about that now with Ukraine. 5,000 of them were built there. 12,000 of them were built in Poland at that time. Now, the aircraft continues to go on. And how does it do that? Well, it keeps getting upgraded. There are tons of upgrades, and they're talking about carbon fiber and doing all kinds of stuff. And the Chinese are actually building the aircraft under license. So this aircraft is still in production. That's the amazing thing about it. Now, there's going to be a whole bunch of Fred fun facts today. Prepare yourself, Greg. A whole bunch of Fred fun facts. The first one is this aircraft has no stall speed. Now, why does it have no stall speed? Because depending on the conditions, and Greg, maybe you can find some video on this, but if you have the right headwind and everything, the pilot can turn the aircraft in the headwind. There are automatic slats on the wing that pop out when it drops down below a certain airspeed, let's say 30 miles an hour, and the slats pop out and the aircraft literally can turn into the wind and then fall. And when it falls at the speed of a parachute. So a parachutist. So literally, they train in the manual with this aircraft that if you have trouble, turn your aircraft into the wind, stall it, and the airplane will literally come down. Now, there have been a lot of accidents with these, so I don't know whether that works or not. Greg, I would implore you to be a candidate to go ahead and try this thing out, and you can go out and find yourself an An-2 and see if you can get it to drop at a parachute. But the reality of this is that there is no stall speed on the airplane. And correct me in the comments if you know of another aircraft that's designed like this, that's the size of this. Let's not talk about these little ultralights or something. This thing is huge. If you have something that's this big that has no stall speed, I'd be curious about it. And my salute today goes out to the An-2 pilots. An-2 pilots have to be some of the most unsung people on the planet. Again, remember, this thing is flying everywhere. It flies in the United States. We see them at air shows, Greg. It flies all over, but it is still a workhorse aircraft to this day. If you are an An-2 pilot, you are really one of the unsung heroes because you are flying a piece of technology that dates well back really to before the Second World War and probably will continue to go on for the foreseeable future. I could see these airplanes being in service another 50 years. Why? Well, the only thing that would take them out of service, and I'm going to tell you something interesting else when we get done with the salute, is maybe the loss of the power plant. But these things are just absolutely amazing. Now, Greg has gone outside himself. I don't get normally to see these. I saw this one today. Leninade. Perfect. Very good. A taste we're standing in line for. That's funny. I like that one. Yes, if you know the old Soviet Union, get hammered and sickled. Wow, somebody really went all out on this label. Let's see, 150 calories. There's no pure cane sugar mafia on this, comrade. That's kind of interesting. A California cash refund sticker, other than the last two which you've served me, which have been like kill shots, death shots. This one actually looks to be fairly fresh. It's cold, so we're gonna jump in a good old Komradsky and see what we got. Now let's see if this one's dead. The last two have been dead. Greg is listening for the fizz. Here, I'll bring it up so you can hear it. Ooh, there was slight fizz, very slight fizz. So the potential for botulism is ever present. But we take one for, there's actually a little bubbly on it. It's not terrible. It's not something I would drink. Mandatory second sip for my comrade Greg. It's a little sweet, but you could probably, if you were so inclined, you could finish that. That's pretty good. Now, Greg can throw up a plan view of this thing and the dimensions, but it's absolutely huge. As I said, it has this really unique slat system in it for how the leading edge slats deploy and the wing slats deploy in order to give you this kind of unique kind of parachute effect with an airplane that is absolutely enormous. Now, the other thing about it is and I'm going to probably butcher this. The Shevestov engine is a derivative, Greg. Here, I'm going to blow your mind, from an Wright, an 1820 engine. So, boom, Greg's mind has exploded. So, the talking about power plants with this, there's a lot of Wrights laying around, 1820s laying around. This thing could continue to go on. Now, Greg can probably pull up some, there's a turboprop version of the airplane that they're working on right now. That is the AN2-100, and that is the turboprop version. The Chinese are playing around with that, and that's where I could see the airplane, continue to go on. Turboprop, much more efficient, a lot more power, time before overhaul. The problem with these radial engines, this is the 985 behind me, but problem with these radial engines is just the time before overhaul. They wear out, and the turboprops have a lot longer lifespan. But this thing could conceivably go on for a long time. Now, Greg, did you know that these are being used as drones? They are, a whole bunch of these showed up on the Russian-Ukrainian border. And what it looks like the Russians are doing, and you can correct me in the comment section, or if you know more about this, put it in. The Russians are flying, remember, there's a whole bunch of them built. There are a dime a dozen. They're long since been paid for, so they're cheap. The Russians are flying them in with their drone strikes. The pilot is bailing out and sending the airplane into Ukraine, and they're using them as decoys, trying to get the Ukrainian air defense to shoot at the An-2 or the bigger target. Think about it, would show up a big target on radar as opposed to the drones, and that's one way they can get some of their drones there. So they are being droned as we speak. Not to mention, if you put, they can carry a fairly heavy cargo. Could you imagine putting explosives in them and flying them in? But what I understand they're being used for is literally, and by the way, if you're a pilot on this kind of a mission, you're insane, because you're literally going in and then bailing out and pointing the airplane at the Ukrainians and hoping for the best. So even in the geriatric state that they are, they're continuing to be used in a modern war, which I would never in a million years thought that they would use them for that. Now, the comparable aircraft are the de Havilland, the DH-3, the Otter, the Dornier, the DO-27, and the Pilatus, the PC-6, the Porter. Those are the comparable aircraft to this. But this is one of those airplanes that is a museum piece, but it is going to continue to have, I think, a lot of life in the outback and in places where you're flying really, really tough cargo. So we never know. We may end up with one of them someday, Greg. Kamradsky, we'll end up with one in the collection. Now, if you want to fly your An-2 with a very cool hat, this is it right here. You could fly this An-2 with your Palm Springs Air Museum mesh hat. Very nice. It is impeccable quality, inspected by Jason. If you go out to the link and click on that, Jason will wing one to you as maybe even flown in by an An-2. You never know. Well, we can't promise that, but you never know what Amazon may be using these days. But we'll get you one of those caps. You surely can use one of those. We cannot do what we do here, including put beautiful engines on these airplanes and fly and do all the stuff we do without your donations. There should be a donation link on this video. Please click on that and throw us a few bucks, a few rubles. Rubles probably won't go anywhere right now, so let's just keep it a few bucks. How's that? And then, of course, if you come across us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We can always use you as a subscriber. All we do are long-form aviation videos on Warbirds. We don't do any of that TikTok 2-minute stuff where Greg lights me on fire and I'm doing a hula dance. If you know people that like these types of videos, go ahead and forward us to us. If you can get past, as I've said before, the funny stage 2 drink and the hat that I start out in, We cover a new aircraft each week. Of course, like us as well on YouTube, like us on Facebook, give us a comment. And of course, my name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum. Have a great day.